The Fuel EX contains Trek's proprietary technology, ABP rear pivot, E2 head tube, Evo link, and full floater rear suspension. For the 2010 model, we've added even more performance with a full carbon seat stay, which is both lighter and more torsionally rigid. And we've also added the DRCV proprietary rear shock.
DRCV is based on dividing the air spring chamber into two halves. We have a primary chamber and then a secondary chamber, and in that the chamber function is controlled by the plunger valve or control valve in between the two chambers. What happens is that up until a given point in the travel, like 50% on the current bikes, we work off the primary chamber only. Once it reaches the 50% point, the valve activates and it basically communicates both chambers. And the advantage is that we're working off of a single small volume chamber for the initial part, keeping the suspension lively, efficient, very controlled, and eliminating that flat dead spot that you get with large volume air cans. But at the same time, right about the time the single can would start ramping up and making the system pretty progressive and make it feel firm in the middle of the stroke and make it difficult to get full travel, that secondary chamber activates and it gives you a very linear, bottomless feel based on having a much greater overall volume, similar to what the large air can shocks would have. Well, that's enough tech talk. I'm going riding. You should do the same. See you on the trails.
I'm Travis Brown with Trek Bicycles, and I'm here to help you set up your new Trek full suspension mountain bike. Today's full suspension bikes are incredibly sophisticated, but they do require a small amount of setup in order for you to get the full potential of performance. You're going to need two tools to properly set up your Trek full suspension bike: a sag meter and a shock pump. Before you do that, download the suspension guide from your Trek website. There you'll find recommended pressures for your rider weight. But remember, rider weight includes you and your gear. First, install the sag meter, and then move the O-ring to the top of the shaft. Then set the pro pedal lever to the off position. This is easily identifiable if the blue lever is pointed away from the drive chain. Now connect the shock pump to your shock. Be sure the threads are fully engaged so that both chambers can receive air. Then inflate to the recommended pressure for your weight. You can find your recommended pressures on the Trek website under your model on the Resources tab. Now you need to cycle the suspension through at least 50% of the travel. This allows both chambers to properly charge. After you've done that, straddle the bike and get on the bike and settle into your regular riding position. It may help to have somebody reset the O-ring on the shaft. Now dismount the bike and see if the O-ring falls within the 10% range on the sag meter. If it's too low, add some pressure. If it's too high, reduce some pressure. It's important to recycle the suspension through its 50% range after each pressure adjustment. Once you've adjusted your sag properly, you can move on to setting rebound. The rebound adjuster is the red knob on your shock. First, turn the red knob fully clockwise into the shock. This is the slowest position. Then dial it out the corresponding number of clicks to the pressure that you've set in the shock. Once this is done, it's time to go out and ride.